Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, yeah? Probably 90% of the theories in this video will be wrong. But there's a chance that one is right and I'll finally win. I'll win and I'm gonna be carried down the street and praised as a hero because I'm back, baby. Kevin Spoilers is back. Now the final episode of Loki is right around the corner and I thought I'd do one more video talking about what I think will be in the finale, namely who the big bad behind it all is. I'm not going to bother with a spoiler warning as this probably doesn't need it, but if it's your first time here then welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka your broski from another Loki. Now let's get into the video. Okay, so judging by the comments over the last 5 weeks, it's pretty clear that the internet really want to see Kang the Conqueror as the big bad. His name has popped up at several points in every one of our breakdowns, and he seems like one of the most likely candidates due to the amount of nods that there are to him laced throughout the show. In the comics, Kang actually worked for the TVA before he went rogue, and potentially we could have the backstory filled in with it being revealed that he was one of their agents, but that he overturned the place and then decided he would streamline the multiverse so that all that existed was one prime timeline in which he was the ruler of everything. This would make a lot of sense going over what we've seen in the show, and it's clear that the TVA are an oppressive group of fascists that will stamp out anything that they don't agree with in order to uphold the sacred timeline. In episode 5 you could catch the head of the Living Tribunal, and in case you don't know who this is, the character is a cosmic entity that watched over the multiverse and made sure that things were kept in line. Thus, Kang taking him out would make a lot of sense. There was also the castle, which we know the mysterious figure lives at, and this could potentially be Castle Limbo from the comics, which is a place that Kang hung out at when he was going under the name Immortus. His primary love interest in the comics is Ravonna Renslayer, and the fact that she hasn't met him yet seems to line up that they're on a collision course to come across each other at some point. It would make a lot of sense to have the pair come together at the end of the season, and it would keep the character in line with how she's been so far, namely her loyalty to the TVA. There's also the central timekeeper who bears a lot of resemblance to Kang, and potentially Kang created him in his image to rule over the organisation. Add to this the Kang logo behind the Avengers Tower, Goliath, and even the colours we see when the portal opens, which are purple, green and blue. It all just seems to be heading towards Kang coming down the line. Now shout out to Eric Voss from You Rock Stars for pointing out that his home of Chronopolis also has pyramids in it, and these could be seen in the void at the end. Pretty much everything in the show seems to be hitting us over the head with the point that it's gonna be Kang, and though I know many think he's the new Mephisto, there is actually a lot more likelihood that he'll be behind it all because we know Jonathan Majors is playing him in the upcoming Ant-Man Quantumania film. Now speaking of films, I heard Kang is making a movie based on the TVA. It's about time. Hey, having that because the movie would be about time, yeah? There's a movie called About Time, and the phrase "it's about time" means like you finally did it, you son of a bitch. So really good joke that. Now moving on, in WandaVision, we did watch as the show set up not only Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but it also laid the seeds for the Marvels and potentially Secret Invasion. Therefore, Loki could be setting up several properties such as Thor Love and Thunder, and maybe the third Ant-Man movie, so his appearance would definitely be a welcome one here. I think there's a strong likelihood that it will be Kang behind it all, and his use of mechanics would explain the TVA being robots, and why there's about 20 Easter eggs linking back to him every 5 minutes. However, I think that the more likely theory is that the person behind everything is actually a Loki variant. Now this is because the story of the show seems to be based on the book Loki, Agent of Asgard, and in that it was revealed that there was an older version of the character manipulating his younger self to carry out things the way that they'd always happened. This show seems like it's operating with characters stuck in certain loops, and this entire thing could be one big loop created by a future version of Loki to ensure that his past version overthrows him and ends up taking over the TVA. Seeds like this were sown as early as episode 1, and the devil in the stained glass imagery, which was referencing Loki, could be setting out how he or she is the devil behind it all. I think it would be absolutely incredible if we got to the castle to see Richard E. Grant playing the character after we watched a version of him die last week. This entire ordeal could be a rite of passage for Loki to make sure he ascends to becoming the ruler of the TVA, and that just makes a lot of sense to me. Now because of this, it could also hint towards something about Sylvie. Though we've been told time and time again that she's a Loki variant and that she has nothing to do with Sylvie Lushton, I still think it might be untrue. If we look at the comics and who Sylvie is, she woke up one day with mystical powers and slowly over time she turned into a hero. However, it was revealed that Loki had actually done this, and that he was manipulating her for his own fun and games. Potentially, this old version of Loki could have enlisted Sylvie into his ranks, wiped her memory, and enchanted her with some new ones. He then could have sent her off to sort of guide his past self to becoming the ruler of the TVA, whilst also making it so that he'd learn the ability to enchant from her, even though she learned it from his future self. Lots of timey-wimey wibbly wobbly stuff, but this would also explain why none of the other Loki variants have ever met a female one before. I know we saw her childhood earlier in the season, but when you're dealing with characters that can either have their memories wiped or false ones put in place, then you can't really take it at face value. From the trailers, we also know that the King Loki version hasn't appeared yet, and potentially this could be what our Loki comes across when journeying into the castle. Now, saying that, I do think that this clip will probably be used by the villain to try and seduce Loki with a sort of, "See, look what you could have if you just side with me. You could have the best puns on YouTube, you pathetic loser." Oh wait, sound like I'm talking about someone else now. Now, this is something that Enchantress also did in Suicide Squad, and as we know, Loki has always wanted to rule over Asgard, so it would be something very tempting for him. Though it could be a big reveal, I doubt that they'd show it in a trailer, and instead I think it's a projection of what Loki could have, which is just a timeline in which he rules everything. However, that doesn't rule out the fact that Loki could be controlling it all. Hell, the show is called Loki, and it's about dealing with Loki variants, so a Loki being behind it all makes a lot of sense. It too would tie into the comics and the general theme of Loki, as in Agent of Asgard we ended with the young version realizing that he didn't want to become his older self, and thus he left to go on to do something bigger and better. Loki has always been seen as a stepping stone to propel others to greatness, and thus him using himself to push himself to something bigger just makes a lot of sense. You know, side tangent, in order for clocks to work, they all need a hand. And I don't care, I'm not apologising for how good that pun is. Yes, it's a good one. Now, he's the person that I'm most leaning towards, and other theories I've seen have been that it's Doctor Doom due to the castle and the Secret Wars-esque landscape that's in the void. I've also seen that it might be Ralph Boner, which, yeah, I'd be very happy with that. We could also stick with the aforementioned Loki theme, but instead of an older version of the main one, we get an older version of Sylvie. She's pretty much the superior Loki anyway, and it would be a big twist to learn that she betrayed the original when she was adamant that it would be him. Now lastly is He Who Remains, the creator of the Timekeepers, who made them at the end of time so that they could start the next universal cycle. We already know that this rock in the void exists at the end of time, and whoever is behind it all did create the Timekeepers. Now if we look at the comics, then he's also a very likely candidate, but I don't know if it would be that big of an ending if he showed up. He's never really been a villain, he doesn't really have anything in the series that set him up, and I think it would be a bit anticlimactic, as he's kind of the character that would just talk them into keeping things the way that they are. Now, He Who Remains was the last surviving TVA member of the previous Universal Cycle, so if they do bring him in, then I think it would have to be an elderly version of Mobius to really have any true impact. He did promise to go and burn the TVA down, but potentially he could have been captured, had his memory wiped, and then have been forced back into his life of servitude, minus a jet ski. I think that would be the most impactful thing, and if they do bring in He Who Remains, for me that would be the best way to do it. Now we do know that season 2 is on the way, and thus I can kind of see this one ending with Loki overthrowing the ruler and then taking the position himself. We will find out very shortly, but in the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the finale. A lot of people think that Sylvie is going to die in the end, which I think is quite interesting, but I just wanted to cover the villain reveals in this video. But yeah, the comments are yours to talk about whatever you want to talk about, including how great my time jokes are. Now we are running a competition right now and giving away 3 MCU box sets on the 30th of July. All you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the theories. We pick the comments at random at the end of the month, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so message me if that's you at Heavy Spoilers on Twitter. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of Black Widow and all the Easter eggs in the movie. We've talked about the coolest details in it, so definitely go give it a watch if you have any questions over that film. Now with that out of the way, thank you for sitting through the video. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.